This is Derrick with TCRN. I'm here at the Contact in the Desert Conference in Joshua Tree, California, talking with New York Times bestselling author and researcher Jim Marrs. How are you doing?
Hey, doing fine.
So, you've been talking throughout the weekend. We're specifically focusing on the alien agenda, the ancient alien theory. So let's talk a little about that first. Your book, Alien Agenda, was one of the biggest books on this topic, exposing all facets of that. You faced some censorship when that book was first coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had books canceled on me, and a lot of people, especially in years past, thought that the whole alien question was some kind of weird thing, that's just goofy. In fact, when I started speaking out and making talks and going on radio back in the day, I'd get these callers that call in and say, well, you're an idiot, you're a nut, why do you think this stuff like that? You don't belong on the air. And you know what? I don't get that anymore. People are wising up. People realize that there's really something going on and that we need to pay serious attention to it. In fact, I will tell you this, that if you're trying to figure out what's going on in the world and what reality is, and you brush off any discussion of ETs or UFOs, you're never going to figure it out because you're throwing out a big piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. It seems like, as we know, mainstream journalism, as I like to call it, old stream, because we want to give them credit.
Lamestream.
Lamestream, there you go, even better. They tend to not cover up, they don't cover on government cover-ups, but very much they stay away from anything to do with the possibility of alien life or advanced technology, hidden archaeology, those type of topics.
Well, that's because you can't get a soundbite on that. If you come out and say, hey, aliens are here and we've got their technology, well, then you sound like a crazy person and everybody, oh, yeah, get him off the air. And if you sit there and try to go through the myriad amount of information and documentation to prove all that, then they go to sleep and you lose their interest. And, it's tough. It's a tough fight.
But as you said, it's definitely growing, as evidenced by the 1,000, 2,000 people here at this conference. Shows like Ancient Aliens on History Channel blowing up and getting a lot of coverage.
Right.
My question, though, in regards to the ancient alien theory, earlier you mentioned Zecharia Sitchin, and for the viewers, many of you are probably familiar with his work as being one of the earliest people to espouse the ancient alien theory. But a lot of the debunkers and naysayers say that Sitchin got it wrong, that now we have technology and there's not only a handful of people who can translate the Sumerian text, so if you're basing your work off his work, then everything from there would be wrong. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that opinion, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, number one, believe it or not, I actually agree. I don't think you should ever base your theologies or your ideas or your truth on one person, and particularly one person's translations of ancient documents. But the Sitchin is not alone. There are many, many other scholars. I could run down a list of 10 or 12 who generally support his translations. And in fact, when you really look at it closely, nobody actually argues with his translations of these ancient Sumerian tablets. They argue with his interpretation. Okay, and I'll be the first to admit you could probably argue with some of the interpretations here, but again, he's not alone. There's a lot of people who see the same thing in it, and more we are coming to find empirical evidence to back up and support the stories that these ancient texts are telling us. For example, they talk about the ancient Sumerian Anunnaki god Enki and how that he had a laboratory in Africa. Well, my friend Michael Tellinger and other researchers have found a place in Africa that is ancient. It's obviously man-made or it's artificial, and it matches the description of Enki's laboratory. So here we have firm evidence that tends to support these ancient stories. What I would tell people is read the stories, read the accounts, look at the translations of various people, and then make your own interpretation.
So you think if we were to completely wipe away the work of Sitchin and possible either misinterpretations or on the other side the accusations that he's trying to fit his theory, even without that work, there's still plenty of other evidence to point towards an ancient alien theory.
Yes, there are artifacts and anomalies, as they call them, all around the world that point to the fact that there were things going on this planet long before our written history, is for sure. And again, you go back to these tablets that were written in cuneiform and baked into stone, and they're still available. And they all say, not just once, but on multiple occasions, they tell about how that the Ananu gods came from the sky and taught them literature, law, language, all of this stuff. And that's not just one tablet in one place. That is commonplace among all the primitives, tribes, and cultures of this world. You got the ancient Chinese with their flying dragons, and the ancient Egyptians with their flying boats, and the Romans with their flying shields, and right on up to the UFOs and the things of today. This has been ongoing. This is nothing new. It didn't start in 1947.
Absolutely. I want to move away from the UFO question for a moment. And for those who are interested more in those topics, check out Jim's book, Alien Agenda, and more recently, The Occulted History. But what I'd like to talk about now is another book you've written about, Terror Conspiracy Revisited, which deals with the 9/11 attacks. And we're looking at 500 plus pages here of all kinds of evidence, circumstantial and theories done by many different people. I am one of the people who are still out there. We're organizing next month. 1 month from now will be the 13th anniversary of September 11th attacks, and there's going to be activists. There'll be Richard Gage and the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and family members and survivors doing street action, symposiums, and documentary screenings. And as evidenced by earlier this year, the guy hijacking the Super Bowl with the Investigate 9/11 message, with new news on the first responders and cancer rates rising, and even the 28 pages of classified information related to 9/11 that we actually now have a bipartisan effort to reveal that information. Obviously, the issue of 9/11 is not dead. There's still tons to investigate, and I just would like to get your thoughts on, after writing this book and updating it, where would you rest, your hand on the most solid theory, the most solid idea? We have tons ranging from no planes to drones. Where do you think that there's the most solid ground?
Well, I would say don't get lost in the forest, examining the trees, and you lose sight of the forest. I would point to one simple thing that I'd like everyone to understand. I'd like to quote the words of John Farmer. Now, who's John Farmer? Well, John Farmer is a former Attorney General of New Jersey, but he just happened to be the senior counsel, the head lawyer of the official Bush-appointed 9/11 Commission. He wrote a book called Ground Truth, and in there he plainly states that the account we got of 9/11 that was given to the committee, and hence to Congress, the media, the public, is, in his words, entirely and inexplicably untrue. Okay, excuse me, if the story we've gotten is entirely and inexplicably untrue, then what's the problem in trying to find out what the truth was? And the truth is, 9/11 was an inside job, okay? There were people within our government that knew what was going to happen. And now from there, you can go off into all kinds of wild theories. You can say that, they made it happen theory with they let it happen theory, and all that's true. But there's really no question that they had adequate warning. They knew it was going to happen. And at the very best, they allowed it to happen, just like they did Pearl Harbor, to get us into this war on terrorism. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is, once you understand the business and social connections between the Bush family, Cheney, the Bin Laden family, Saudi Arabia, and all like that, then you can make a case that they actually contrived the whole thing. But of course, that's not proven, and I'm not saying that.
Absolutely. And so the 28 pages that I mentioned, the classified report that they're working on being released, the senators, Walter Jones, and the others who've actually seen the report, said that it points towards Saudi Arabia and foreign involvement,
right,
which of course denied.
And who visited Saudi Arabia in the summer of 2001 as guest of the princes of Saudi Arabia, the Bush family, and who was in business through the Carlyle Group with the Bin Laden family, the Bush family. And it's just a little bit too incestuous for my liking.
So we have, I'd say, fairly obvious, if not concrete, proof waiting to be released that points to Saudi Arabia. Others point towards Israeli involvement. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there's definitely an Israeli connection. You'll find it all in my book, The Terror Conspiracy Revisited. And what I'd like to address right quick is that I'm sure I can already hear some people going, so what? So what? That was 2001. Now it's 2014, 15. Why do we care? Why do we care? Because everything that's going on right now, the Ukraine and the Gaza and the Middle East and the war on terror, for God's sake, and the TSA groping you at the airport, make you take off your shoes and your belt and your jacket. Where are they? Why aren't they on the border? Nobody's stopping anybody down on the border. I mean, can't people think for themselves anymore? Hey, if we're supposed to be so afraid of an international terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda or whoever, and they're trying to slip weapons of mass destruction into our country, don't you think the first step would be to guard the border, secure the border? But they haven't done anything. So obviously, there's an agenda going on here, and we need to find out what it is, because everything that's happening to us today, it can be taken right back to 9/11.
Absolutely. One last question on 9/11. With the various topics we just went into, citizen efforts, family efforts, architects and engineers, other independent researchers.
All these people trying to do their part, and where's the news media? Hello?
Well, some of us are trying to be the new, we're influenced and inspired by old media.
I know,
like
but you're David against Goliath.
We're trying. Do you think that with with these efforts, that it's possible that there ever will be any sort of independent investigation?
Oh, there'll be more investigations, more runaround, more classified stuff declassified, more whistleblowers. And what's going to happen, I think, is the same thing that's happened in the Kennedy assassination. Enough time will go by where everybody understands that 9/11 was an inside job and that they did that to precipitate the war on terror, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's never going to be an official announcement. You're not going to get some government official get up and say, okay, here's what really happened. There's too many jobs imperiled, too much history to be rewritten. And so it'll just come about as a growing realization on the part of the public, just like Kennedy assassination. When I started off and I went through it, I lived through that. I met Jack Ruby, I knew what was going on. And I tried to tell people there's a big conspiracy, well, you're a nut. But now most people are on board with that. They kind of understand. They don't know all the details, we may never know. But they do know that there was a big conspiracy. Well, they're going to know the same thing about 9/11.
Absolutely. One last question, and this one may be a pretty open-ended one, but I think that this is something that you're probably well researched on. Recently, we've seen the Israeli-Palestine conflict come back into the forefront, the mainstream. What do you think is the bigger issue? I know you touched on some of the importance of that land in some of your books, as far as Sumeria and other, just that whole region. But what do you think is the importance of them maintaining that conflict, and obviously the Western governments funding the Israeli government, supporting them, and then also Hamas getting funding from Western governments? What's the end game here?
Well, that's it. It's a game. It's a game they're playing to try to set up their version of their own new world order. I think the thing you have to understand in trying to deal with the Middle East, in particular with Israel, is that you're dealing with three separate topics. You're dealing with race, religion, and political movement. Okay. Now, the Hebrew race, the Semitic race that were there 1,000 years ago, that's a racial group, and we all know it's not right to discriminate on someone due to their race. Then you have Judaism. That's a religion. Sammy Davis Jr. converted to Judaism, but he wasn't a Hebrew, was it? Okay. So, and we all know that it's not right and proper to discriminate against someone because of their religious beliefs. But then you have Zionism, which is a political movement, which involves, yes, a lot of Semites, and yes, a lot of Jews, non-Semitic Jews, Christian Jews, a lot of Christians, a lot of non-Jews. In fact, the biggest proponents of Zionism originated in Russia and came from Eastern Europe. And these are the people now who are running Israel. And I've been to Israel. There's even huge debates and arguments over there about their policies and about what they should be doing. But we rarely get that here because the Zionists have been very, very masterful in hooking us all up to the guilt trip about the Holocaust and that we're God's children and yada yada. And but a political movement should be open to inspection and criticism.
Absolutely. One last question. A couple years ago, you told me that you believe that there was an awakening taking place. Do you still believe that?
Absolutely. I mean, all you got to do is look here at this contacting the Desert Conference. I mean, like I said, their first one last year, I was here, and they were overwhelmed because they had about, I don't know, 500 people, 600 people, and they were expecting 300 or 400. Well, this year, I think they get well over 1,000. I don't even know. Have you heard any numbers?
I heard somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000.
Yeah, well, I believe it. This place is wall to wall. And what does that tell you? That tells you people are wising up. People are searching for truth and information. And this is great. Yeah, it's happening. And this is a consciousness raising that is taking place.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out Jim's book and all the rest of his work.
Sky, this thing landed, and for all those reasons, plus the fact that there are government documents backing up this story that you can see on the government's own website, for all those reasons, this is one of the most important, if not the